good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, you thirsty bunch of beer drinkers, whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. With the nice weather and copious amounts of new GLB releases, combined with an LCBO strike, deadlines for convenience store rollout quickly approaching, and the normal day-to-day in craft beer, we took a little pause on the show over the last couple of weeks. So thank you for your patience while we hustled to get beer out of our door and into your fridge. Today on the pod, we have an old friend of mine in the breweries. Joining us in studio, Mr. Dan Grant, co-founder and owner of Toronto's Bossanova Wine and Beer Shop. The wonderfully curated wine and beer store, or boutique if you want to get really fancy, at 103 Roncesvalles here in Toronto, focuses on products that are exceptional, are largely independent or family-owned, like GLB, and worth seeking out, and is one of a handful in the province that I'd highly recommend you visit one day. But, and I say that like the Germans, but did you know that Dan was in the beer industry long before he opened the doors to Bossanova in 2021? We're going to hear all about that today. From his beer writing days with Now Magazine and his own blog, BrewScout, to the founding of the very popular RUNTOBEER Run Club, teaching Prud'homme, hosting Toronto Brewery Tours, and more. Dan has been a fixture in the Ontario beer scene since 2012, or maybe even longer. We'll find out. And it's going to be a pleasure to sit down with him today. But first, as is customary, it's time for me to crack a Great Lakes Premium Lager and hear the super professional ad about cases of our crushable lager. Hang tight.
There appears to be only one line on this sheet. $50 for a case of Great Lakes Premium Lager. That's it? That's the ad? Okay. Cases of Great Lakes Premium Lager are only $50 every day of the year.
Well, hello there, Dan. Welcome to Between Two Fermenters. How you doing?
Great to be here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you happy to be here?
When you agreed to my rate, I thought, it'd be kind of a dick to try to negotiate after that. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Dan, there is a beer right in front of you. You chose...
I chose the lovely Great Lakes Vienna Lager.
We were just commenting at the brewery, or we have been commenting at the brewery, of the brewers and some of the other staff, how underrated this beer actually is. And they've tweaked it over the years to make it just so, and it is a highly spectacular beer that doesn't get enough street cred.
Really, Vienna Lager as a style doesn't get enough respect. And it was like, they used to be St. Andre's Vienna Lager. I don't know if that's still being made or not.
I don't want to give it a plug here, but yes, it is, and okay. It's at LCBO's, but it's like $2 a can. So they've just you can.
It ain't what you
see when I'm going with this. Yeah.
No, this is a lovely beer. I'm so happy to have this.
I'm kind of jealous I'm not having it now too, but I have a Great Lakes Premium Lager, which I love, the beer of my summer. So here we go. Here's the way I see this conversation playing out today. If you're ready,
go for it.
Let's get into the early days first, talking about your beer writing career. If we call it a career, we'll find out. Before moving on to RUNTOBEER, which everyone knows you for. But then we'll get into Bossanova and your new project, Bar Bossanova, and finish with some rapid fire questions. That sound like a plan to you?
I'm ready.
All right. So we're on the same page. We got you a beer. I got a beer. Let's dive in. So the first things first, I know who you are. Great Lakes knows who you are. But if, do the elevator pitch. Who are you and who's Dan Grant?
Yeah, so I am somebody who's been in the beer industry for a little over 10 years, as you said. I used to be in the modeling industry, and I used to get sent all over Canada doing scouting and development for models coming into the industry. So,
I'm glad you clarified that because I was going to ask.
Yeah, I was not a model.
Behind the camera, in front of the camera.
Definitely not a model. But no, I was sent from Sydney, Nova Scotia to Regina to Red Deer to do model searches and talk to the models about their rights for Vancouver, for Montreal, for Toronto, where the agency I was with had 3 different offices. A lot of what I was doing when on my downtime was going to the local brew pubs or the local breweries and trying different things. So I started a Twitter account called BrewScout, which became also a blog. And because I was out scouting and then, drinking the beer. So I was scouting the beer across Canada when there wasn't much in the way of social media.
I get it. So you're scouting models, but you're drinking the beer at all these places in Canada. Put the two together. BrewScout is born 2013.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Okay. And what are you doing today?
Today I am running as you mentioned, a bottle shop called Bossanova Wine and Beer, and also opening a bar by the time I don't know what day this gets released. It might be open by the time
it
you're
might be
hearing
open.
this.
Yeah, by the time you're opening this. What were you doing before? So the modeling, but how did you get sucked into the beer fold? Like, so you were doing modeling, and you're
right. So I was in the modeling industry from the mid '90s until 2014. I finally left, or 2015, I guess. And basically, I was just growing out of it. Every year, the models coming into the industry were always 15 and 16 years old, but I was always getting a year older. Mm-hmm. So there just came a point where I thought, I don't speak the same language as these people. I don't understand what they mean.
Whatever.
Exactly. And so I just figured it was time for me to get out, and beer seemed the nice way to go. So,
LOL.
Yeah.
But why beer? Like, what was it?
Beer doesn't call me at 2:00 in the morning with boyfriend problems.
Well, you've never worked in licensee sales then, have you?
I don't call my reps with, yeah. No, so beer is something I've loved since the 80s, since I was too young to be drinking it properly. I grew up in Calgary, and Big Rock. So in 1988, right before the Olympics in Calgary, the big brewers went on strike, and Big Rock was a new fledgling brewery at the time. And basically took market share away from the big guys. They introduced craft beer at a time when people were saying, I need something to drink. Like when a big organization goes on strike, people find the little guys. Sometimes it's a good thing for the little guys.
Happened in Ontario too, 1984 or 1985 with Brick Brewery, which is now Waterloo Brewing, which is now Carlsberg.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I discovered Big Rock Traditional, and ever since then I've been in love with craft beer.
There you go. But how did it pull you in to say this is something I want to do as a career?
I think I just, coming from Alberta, when I first moved here, it's been interesting. I was listening to your podcast with Cass Enright. When I moved here in 2001, I was looking for craft beer in Toronto, and it wasn't that easy to find. It was much easier in Alberta because Big Rock had made a big impression by then, as had Wild Rose and Alley Cat. And when I came here, I just searched online to find out where I could find craft beer, and the Bar Towel, Cass Enright's site.
That.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got me into it. So I just hopped around Toronto, found whatever I could. It was Amsterdam Nut Brown was my go-to back then. And
was it called Nut Brown back then, or was it called Downtown?
It was Nut Brown back then. Nut Brown. Yeah.
So you're dating yourself here. So 2013, you started blogging, BrewScout, and I had just left the blogging days because I went to Great Lakes then, but we had kind of some same circles at that time covering Ontario beer scene. What do you remember most about those early days of the covering Ontario market?
My first memory of you was I was in the Netherlands. I took my bike to the Netherlands and cycled around there in Belgium a little bit, just drinking.
I've never done that by the
No, but you were running Toronto Beer Week at the time, and you had sent an email inviting me to an event at Toronto Beer Week.
Okay.
And all I could think about, I was lying in bed and I was drinking all of this amazing beer from Belgium and from Germany and from the UK. The nice thing with the Netherlands is it's right between these three great beer nations. So I was drinking all of this great beer and thinking all I want is a Devil's Pale Ale. And you had emailed me. It's like, oh man, I want that nice, and I was missing North American beer, which I went to Europe to get away from that, to drink the European stuff. But, so the obviously Toronto Beer Week, Golden Tap Awards, we had a lot of crossover there.
And you wrote for Now magazine.
Yeah, so my first writing gig was at the Toronto Standard. Online.
Tell us about that.
So Sean Beckingham, who I think used to have some involvement with GLB on the promotion side.
Tweet.
Exactly.
Sean, if you're listening, tweet.
So Sean knew I was in love with beer when I was working in the modeling industry, and Sean also used to be a modeling agent.
That's right. Yep.
So Sean, when he was trying to get I think he was promoting Sam Adams at the time, maybe.
Correct.
And was trying to get some coverage for them in the Toronto Standard. And they said, well, we don't really cover beer. So he said, I've got a guy for you. Because I'd been doing a lot of writing on the fashion side at the time.
Okay.
I had a very popular website for the modeling industry. And so Sean knew I loved beer, knew I loved writing, hooked me up with the Toronto Standard. And that sort of launched my beer writing career in the paid format.
Yep.
So that led to Now Magazine, Taps Magazine, Scandinavian Brewers Review, and a few others.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the Taps ones. That was after my time there. I would have taken it. It was
I think you were the one who introduced me to them because I was at a Bryden's GLB party, a Christmas party.
There you go.
And I think you introduced me to somebody from Taps then. And so that's what led to my first Taps articles.
And what was the focus of your writing about beer then?
I wasn't, I mean, I love tasting beer and writing beer notes and everything like that, but I knew that wasn't where I was going to ever get an audience. You know, there other people were doing that, especially in the back of Taps magazine. And I like to write about the people. I like to write about the stories behind the beer. I think that's what makes craft beer better, is that there's stories, there's actual people you can see. You
There's real people behind the product.
Yeah, it's not the legend of John Labatt or Sleeman, or, you know, it's actual people doing the day-to-day things.
There is a real Mike Lackey that you can have a beer with.
I've done that. Yeah.
So that you started that in 2013. You started writing about beer, and it was in 2014 that you had this idea. And I want to hear about how you got the idea, but you started RUNTOBEER with another person who now owns a brewery. So let's go into the RUNTO lore.
Yeah, so this sort of goes back to me leaving the modeling industry. I knew I was done with it. I knew I had to get into something else, and I knew craft beer was where I wanted to go. So I was honestly a bit depressed when I left my job, because I'd been in the modeling industry for close to 20 years at that point. Yeah. And from my first wife was a model, and that's sort of dragged me into it the wrong way. But anyway, I was wanting to get out of the modeling industry, but I was at the top of my career. I had a website that was getting like 3,500 unique viewers every day from all over the world. If you wanted to know what was going on in the Canadian modeling industry, I was the source. But I didn't want to do that anymore. I just felt weird. I knew I wanted to be in craft beer, so I was having my very popular Twitter account and doing an okay blog. So I just put out a tweet saying, hey, I'm going to run 5K to Mill Street this Saturday. Who wants to join me? And the only person who showed up was Tej Sandhu, who now is one of the principals at Merit Brewing in Hamilton.
That's right. And at the time, was he working for Left Field or?
No, that came later.
That came later.
So he was working at Left Field before he actually told them that he was planning on opening a brewery. Yeah. So, yeah.
Market research.
Tej was also a beer blogger at the time. Yeah, he and his wife had a very low profile blog called We Write Beer.
Oh, I probably, in my head, I probably have heard of it or seen it, but anyway, so you guys, he came, you two
he was the only one who showed up. Yep. And then we thought, well, I think more people would want to do this, but it was just a lousy day outside. So he and I agreed we'd try again in a few weeks. So we there was a Toronto Winter Festival of Beer that year at Evergreen Brickworks. And so again, Tej and I planned a route, and nobody else showed up. We thought eventually people are going to show up. So the third time we did it, we had Sam from Sawdust City,
Corbet.
Exactly. And Dave and Tara from Eastbound.
Okay.
Yeah, and Eastbound wasn't even around
too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, they
were
worked
all
at Mill
runners
Street at the same time.
Exactly, yeah. And they were all runners. So they showed up for the third one. We ran to Indie Ale House and sat down with Jeff Broders and Jason Fisher and had some beer, and it was a great time.
Nice.
Yeah. And just grew from there.
Okay. But you guys obviously had to have a talk to say, let's create should I say a business?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was just a run club, and we were on meetup.com initially. Then they wanted to charge us $60 a year, and we thought that's too rich for us. We're never going to, there's no revenue model in this. But BlogTO made the mistake one time of confusing us with something called the Canada Beer Run, which is one of those ones that goes from brewery to brewery, and you drink along at every step along the way, whereas we were always just, do your run, then have a beer.
Yeah.
But they put pictures of the other event and associate it with my event. And so 100 people showed up one time. We'd gone from like 15 runners one week to over 100.
Okay.
And then it just blew up from there.
So again, go back to tell us about what is RUNTOBEER. We haven't actually said it yet. Yeah.
So RUNTOBEER is a almost weekly running series that goes to a different brewery, bar, or beer festival every week.
Yeah, the website, a free, fun, and non-competitive running series that explores Toronto through its craft beer scene.
Yeah. And it's super inclusive. We, a lot of run clubs say no runner gets left behind. We actually mean it. We have people who will stay very, very back. They're called sweepers. They make sure nobody has to walk by themselves. Everybody gets a beer when they show up at the final destination, whether it's the brewery or the beer pub. And then more beers follow after that. But it's super inclusive. I'm really proud of it. As I've stepped away from it a little bit. I'm more of an ambassador now than I am anything. But, the people who are running it now, one of the things I love about RUNTOBEER is it's very not so Caucasian. Like it's, I am a straight white male. I'm, everything you think of when you think of craft beer, except the beard. And RUNTOBEER is not that. Like the 2 of the 5 directors right now are female. 3 of the 5 are Asian. It's just, it's not what craft beer normally looks like
in promotional videos and Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And we've worked very closely over the years with RUNTO. Great Lakes has been a brewery that RUNTO and you, through you, have done a lot of things together. So we have runs to the brewery, runs to the brew pub. We've sponsored you in particular in various runs and charity activations.
Yes, you have.
Like the time you dressed as Gordie Levesque.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, and you should know by now, but if you don't, he's the lumberjack on the Canuck Pale Ale cans. But you dressed as Gordie Levesque and tried to run or attempted to run a marathon in honest to God boots, which is, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So let's get nostalgic about this for a few moments and reminisce on these partnerships. So let's go with the first one. Let's go with, you brought us Goodfoot Delivery.
Yeah.
Tell us about Goodfoot Deliveries and the collaboration beers.
Goodfoot is wonderful. And what's interesting, GLB had actually sponsored Goodfoot before I brought them in. The year before, there was a donation made because when I went to Goodfoot and said I'm going to do this thing with GLB, they said, oh yeah, they're already a great sponsor.
Oh, so, well, there you go.
Yeah, right.
But
you guys are doing more than you know.
I will tell you that we probably made a donation for something, but it wasn't until we worked with you to get the partnership together with Barb, who's no longer there now.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So Goodfoot, for those who don't know, it's a delivery service in Toronto that uses public transit to get packages around, and it hires people from the neurodiverse community. So typically you think of people with autism and somewhere on the spectrum. These are people who, have to learn to be comfortable taking a bus by themselves sometimes, or talking to strangers, or knocking on a stranger's door. So there's a lot of training that goes into giving these people meaningful employment, but they're the most reliable, wonderful, just beautiful people doing this service that, unless you need 1 hour rush delivery service, why wouldn't you give it to them to take it across on a bus and knock on a stranger's door? And I really love everything they do.
How did you get involved with them?
So Black Toe Running is a running shop on Bathurst. Mike, who owns it, his son was one of their couriers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so through the running community, I found out about them, and I just loved everything they had to do. I've met with them many times, and
So we've had some of the couriers over the years actually come to the brewery and go for a brewery tour, check it out, so they could see, hey, we made this beer with RUNTO beer, and the proceeds go back to Goodfoot. Then they come in and they just check it out and they see it. And we had some good conversation with some of the carriers about some of the things they see on the subway. And anyway, it was always a good thing. So, but tell us about the collaboration beers that we did for those.
So I think we've done 3 prior to the pandemic. It was a pale ale each time, done by Great Lakes Beer.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember the names of them even anymore, but all of there was always money
names.
There were names.
Oh, like High Five, I think was one.
Yeah, exactly. High Five Pale Ale was one, and but the cans were designed by one of RUNTOBEER's principals at the time. Yep. Really cool stuff, and proceeds from the sale of each can went to Goodfoot. So I think over the years we raised about $7,000 just for Goodfoot, just through the sale of GLB beer that was didn't cost me anything. So I really super appreciate that.
And those beers normally landed right before the Scotiabank?
Yeah, it's no longer Scotiabank as a sponsor, but the Toronto Waterfront Marathon that happens in the fall.
So that beer would come out. Every RUNTO beer member that was in that would get a can, I think,
every race finisher that wore a RUNTOBEER shirt would get one when they finished. And we also had events at the craft beer market.
That's right.
Where all of the participants who came and showed their medals got a free beer.
And what I love seeing on social was the night before, where everyone was posting like their race bibs and what they were wearing.
Runners,
okay. Obviously, if anyone has ever seen me, you know that I used to run. I don't run anymore. I haven't run in 20 years. No, but he
does have a RUNTOBEER shirt.
I do. I have a couple RUNTOBEER shirts. But the pictures of the beer, everyone was going to be drinking. That was their post run beer, which was always great.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we talked about Gordie.
Yeah.
So tell us about the Gordie Marathon year.
So let's go to the year before that too, where I had mentioned that I was going to run a marathon for charity. Mm-hmm. I think at that time I was running for the Toronto Children's Hospital. And I just said, here's stupid things I will do if breweries will afford enough money. And one of them was I will shave my head to the first brewery that pitches in, I think $100. And
I think you did more than that.
No, you donate.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's why I think my ask was 100, but more came from that. I think it was whatever proceeds came from the RUNTOBEER event that day.
Okay, and I think we put out a jar on for all the customers as well.
Yeah,
too.
so it ended up being a lot more money than I had expected to raise, and that was the first time I'd ever formally met Peter Bullitt,
the owner of Great Lakes Brewery.
Exactly. Yeah. So Troy had set all of this up, and we went out in the patio that I've just learned maybe shouldn't have been licensed at the time, but we can edit that.
Yeah, it's years ago. Yeah, right.
No harm happened.
It didn't fall down.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I was sat in this chair at the head of the patio, and Peter came out with his trimmers and shaved like half of my head. It was like patchwork, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm done." He walked away and just left me with this like globs of hair coming out all the different angles, and it was terrible. But luckily, he came back and finished the job after a while.
It was a good memory.
It was a great time.
Okay, so that was that year, and then the next year you did the marathon.
Next year, I came to GLB and said, "If I ran the marathon dressed as Gordie Levesque, would you sponsor me?" And GLB again said yes. There was no hesitation. So I spent the summer growing a full beard, which I'm not somebody who ever has a beard. Like I'll have, like a week's worth of growth sometimes in the winter, but I grew a full beard, colored it black because I am graying and have been for a while now. And, I had to, so it was for a Guinness World Record. It was to try to be the fastest marathon run by a lumberjack. And the Guinness record people said, okay, you've got to have flannel, you've got to have jeans, you've got to have suspenders and boots.
Yeah.
And a toque. Well, they didn't know. Well, they called it a beanie because they're in the UK. But anyway, it's a toque, right? The boots were the killer. The boots were what prevented me. I trained all summer. I bought ankle weights. I was running through the summer in shorts and ankle weights. I looked like an idiot, with this stupid beard and
looked like a 1980s workout video or something. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It was a hard summer.
But I can remember you saying like the blisters were insane.
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when it actually came time to do the marathon, it was so much worse than I thought because while you're out on the marathon course, I'm not running my normal running pace. I'm running slower because I'm in boots and flannel and everything else. And people are like other runners are trying to get selfies with me. So they're getting in my way. They're slowing me down. I got as far as the halfway mark. As soon as I crossed the 21K mark or the halfway barrier, 21.1, I had to pull over because my ankles were just
I was disappointed you couldn't get to 23. Like 21, man, that's amazing. Yeah.
It was, anyway, we raised over $10,000 for Goodfoot through that. So that was just, worth it.
Did you run to the brewery before or after that? Because you were dressed as Gordie, you came to the brewery.
Yeah, through some of my training runs, I ran to the brewery. As Gordie, just to get used to it.
So we, during that time, we record this in Mike Boone, Toronto Mike podcast, his recording studio. And as we were coming over here, he was saying, or you were saying, yeah, I think he ran into me. So yeah, Mike sent me a picture saying, I think some guy just ran by me on my bike, dressed as Gordie Levesque. And it turned out it was you. So that's full circle.
It was just this picture of me running along the lake shore out in the distance. And it was
some crazy guys dressed with a toque and a flannel.
In the middle of summer. Yeah.
Okay. But that's crazy. But then you also did another thing that I find crazy. You ran from GLB to Hamilton.
I did. Yeah. So I used to be in much better shape than I am now. So one year I was registered for the Ottawa Marathon and ended up not doing it, but I was in shape to do it. So a few weeks later was the inauguration of Merit Brewing in Hamilton. It was the year Tage opened the brewery. And I was invited for one of the soft launch days as like friends and family or industry or something. I don't know. But I thought, you know what? I'm in shape. I can run a marathon, no problem. It's 60K to Merit from GLB. I can probably do that because unlike a marathon where I will not stop unless if I stop, I'm done. Here I figured I could stop along the way. I had a beer I had a beer in Oakville and, so I just decided it was actually that morning. It was raining that day. It was raining terribly, but the wind was going from east to west. So I knew the wind was going to push me there. I was soaked the whole way. Like the rain was actually cooling me the whole way. My everything was like running in sponges, but it was actually ideal weather for it because there was nobody else out there. My watch stopped, my battery died a couple of times, but I got the 60K done. I started at GLB. I think I was on the bus to GLB when I said, "Are you there?" Yeah. I'm going to start from GLB. I'm going to run to Merit. You showed up, gave me a beer, sent me on my way. And
I was like that crazy fool. Good luck.
yeah. But it was great. And it was, tweeting my shots along the way and all kinds of engagement that I never would have expected. I don't look for Instagram followers in a big way, but
you've also done the bike in the past too, where you stopped in to have beers at Great Lakes and then kept going on the bike to Hamilton too. But so we've also done the cheer stations for different marathons, and so through you organize Great Lakes to be in Philadelphia, Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Cleveland was fun. It's fun handing out Great Lakes brewery beers in Cleveland. The locals were a little confused.
But everyone when you finished the race, you handed off a Canuck on.
For our own runners, we handed them a can of beer. Yeah. For anybody though who wanted to, we had like little Dixie cups of Canuck.
Yeah.
So
instead of taking a splash of water, you got a splash of Canuck.
Exactly. You can get your water and your Gatorade somewhere else. But we handed out, I think in Philly, we handed out over 1,000 tastes of Canuck.
That's amazing.
To thirsty runners. Yeah.
So we've talked about all those little things, and there's one I'm forgetting, and I can't. Ragnar. Did we do the Ragnar with you?
Ragnar, yeah. So Ragnar is a point-to-point. Well, there's two. There's one in. It's not happening in Canada anymore, but it's a long-term, like a day and a half type relay. Yeah. So the one that GLB took part in, we started in Cobourg and ran to Niagara Falls, like to the falls. Yeah. And GLB sponsored us for that too. So all of our vehicles had the GLB logos, and
and that's the shirt I still have, that purple shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we got like 6 cases of beer to take with us, which was really, really nice.
So I am an honorary member of RUNTOBEER.
You're a full-time.
Oh, full-time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears now. I want to talk about Bossanova. I want to know everything about Bossanova. I want the listeners to know everything about Bossanova. I love this shop, but admittingly, I don't get there as often as I should to support you. But tell everyone about it. What is it? Where is it? What do you do?
So Bossanova, during the pandemic, when the rules changed that bars could sell alcohol to go, we were the first place in Ontario to apply for a new license to build a place that would be our primary purpose has to be as a bar by law, but definitely we opened it with the retail component in mind. So we were the first place to take out a new license with the purpose of being an alcohol to go service that's an alternative to the LCBO, the beer store, the wine rack, wine shop, all of those. So we sell exclusively stuff that's not in the LCBO, with one exception, just because it's too popular not to have in the fridge after I mistakenly ordered it one time.
Or Labatt 50?
I'll be honest, Muddy York, Gaslight Hellas. It's such a good beer.
Well, in fairness, you can't really find it on LCBO across.
Right. Right. And we sell, I'm told we sell more of it than most LCBO branches.
There you go.
Yeah, our customers love that beer. And then during the LCBO strike, we also did bring in Octopus, Haze Mama, Pompous Ass, and Canuck. Yeah. But those will be gone soon, back to the LCBO where people pay less for them. But anyway, so Bossanova is usually about 450 different products at any time that are not in the LCBO or the beer store. It's about 170 beer, about 70 ciders, and 200 wine, if I'm doing the math right, about that. Actually, wine, I think we have even more than that. So we're probably close to 500 now.
And you're open 7 days a week?
We're open 7 days a week. We're on Roncesvalles Ave. Our staff are all immaculately trained. I am the beer side of the business for sure. But so the nice thing is with us opening the bar next week, we've gone from 2 full-time and 2 part-time employees 3 weeks ago to 3 full-time and 7 part-time. So we've added 1 full-time member and 5 other part-time members, if I'm doing the math correctly again. But they're all really, really well trained. And they're all people who really know the industry. Even the part-timers we have are part-timers who have other jobs, but just are coming to us to complement their. So we're not they're not stuck in part-time, and not everyone gets a living wage. Like, we are totally legit in making sure that everyone gets paid properly, that everyone is treated properly, that vacation requests are honored, and so we just wanted to be a place where people can come and talk about wine or beer and find what they want. And it's been really nice. I mean, we were lucky that we landed in a pocket on Roncesvalles where there's not an LCBO or a beer store within a kilometer of us.
And on a great Roncesvalles
Yeah.
Avenue. Yeah.
Roncesvalles Avenue is great because it's all independent shops.
Yeah.
Like other than a couple of Tim Hortons and a Starbucks way at the other end of the street, it's all independent shops. It's all locally owned and the neighborhood
Walkable
really
and
so pedestrian friendly. Yeah. When it's raining, our business slumps. When it's sunny, we thrive. But we want it to be a place where the community feels like it's their place, where they're going to come and talk to us. And we know most of our customers' names. We've done over 40,000 transactions in a year or 2 years, 2.5 years.
nice.
And yeah, most of it is repeat business. Most of it is people who can come in and they know they can talk to us and find the wine or the beer they want.
And it's not just Ontario beer.
It's mostly Ontario beer
now?
because importing beer is such
Yeah.
as you talked to Cass about last time, it's the import rules in this province are a little sticky for craft beer.
You had some Quebec breweries in at one point, did you not?
We Trud'homme through Molson.
Molson.
That didn't last very long. We did have Judiciel one time, but it was stuff I shouldn't have bought.
Yeah.
It was past its date. So anyway, we haven't done that again.
Well,
I would love to, but because everything that comes into this province has to go through the LCBO, go through its lab testing, go through
markups
and sitting in an unrefrigerated warehouse until it actually gets out there.
Yeah.
And it's as difficult to bring in a beer from Quebec as it is for one from Italy or Japan.
100%.
We have Italian, we have Japanese, we have Belgian beer. I don't have Quebec beer, and Quebec makes great beer. And it used to, me coming from Alberta, where I grew up, I'll go to Alberta and I'll see amazing Quebec beer that came through Ontario to get there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop here.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating.
But you can order some Great Lakes that's literally packaged a day before, and
sometimes the same day. I've had it. I've had Jeremy. So Jeremy, our rep, who's also been on this podcast. Jeremy is our rep, and I love the guy. He's fantastic, and he will honestly hustle. He will say, "Hey, we're packaging it this morning. Do you want it this afternoon?" And it will show up, and the date's stamped on the box, and I know I'm getting the fresh stuff. And GLB's always been great to deal with.
Fresh GLB.
GLB.
So, as a beer buyer, what do you look for when you're going to purchase? Are you actively seeking things out, or are you waiting, or are you hoping breweries contact you, or is it a little bit of both?
I hope it's not controversial to say this. It might rub some people the wrong way, but I don't want the breweries who are buying people tarps and patio umbrellas. And, if I know that my competitor down the street.
What the hell's a tarp? You're bringing a tarp?
Like an awning.
Yes, I got you.
A branded. Yeah. So if the pub down from me is getting a line discount because they've done, I don't want that in my bar. I love dealing with all my friends and Lovebird and these tiny breweries, Fine Balance in Kingston, that make great stuff that aren't being recognized by the LCBO, but they're like making really, really good beer. So I want that. And then, GLB is probably the biggest brewery we bring in, but GLB still feels like a small brewery to me. I still can.
We are.
Yeah, but you're a big small brewery.
We're a middle of the road.
There are other breweries smaller than you that are cutting these deals that are marketing machines, and I love that. If I emailed Peter, I know Peter would respond to me. I know when I've been to the GLB brew pub, I've seen Peter putting up the slats or taking stuff outside.
Now, if you can get Peter to respond to your email, you tell me how you did it because he doesn't respond to mine. Okay, you mentioned Bar Bossanova.
Yeah.
Tell us about Bar Bossanova.
So it's literally an extension of what we have. It's right next door to our current location. It's going to be more of a charming wine and beer. So where we are now, we have a lot of people who come in and they want to have a beer and
you crack open some cans or bottles. And,
which is nice, but people are shopping for bottles around them and having discussions. And it's not really a comfortable place to have a beer the way we would like it to be. So Bar Bossanova is just that. There's no screens. There's no live music. It'll just be a place where you can have a beer or a glass of wine and a decent conversation and, relax.
So beer on tap?
No, we don't have any draft lines.
Okay.
It's a very small space. We can only fit 27 people.
Okay.
Well, 30, but including staff. So we want to be a place where it's more intimate, more charming.
So you crack a can.
Excellent
and pour,
craft beer. Yep. Exactly.
So tell me about the service. Are you going to just crack a can and give a can, or?
Well, we've got glasses.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we have glassware, and we will. It's going
to be educational, yet a local spot just to come in and
the education
unwind.
will be more on the bottle side, like the existing space we have, where you can come in and talk to us at length about whatever you want to talk about. The other side, we just want to help you find what you want to drink, but then deliver it to you and leave you alone so you can relax and enjoy it.
So if I walk in and say, hey, that can of Thrust looks really amazing, but I don't know anything about it, you'll
say
tell
that's
us
not ours because that's in the LCBO. So.
Well,
Take your beer somewhere else, sir.
Beer X, and then you'll
Vienna
send,
Lager.
Yeah,
Vienna Lager will always be on.
Okay, so then you send them across and say, okay, if you want, go have a can over there, and then they can buy it to go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, we have 2 more questions before we take a break. But as someone that follows the industry very closely, how do you see C-stores, convenience stores, impacting sales? I know we talked before we came here that with the LCBO strike, you actually saw some increased traffic.
Yep.
But with C-stores coming soon, how do you think that's going to impact not only Bossanova, but just the industry in general?
I am somebody who always approaches it as a beer lover. Somebody who grew up in Alberta where stores have been privatized since 1992, who traveled a lot to my old head office, was in Quebec for the modeling agency I worked at. So I'd go to Montreal and shop at the Dépanneur. I always think the consumer should be taken care of. And I want them, if they want a Molson Canadian or if they want a Budweiser, if the convenience store down the street from me is giving them that, great. Just means they're not going to come into my place and expecting to find a $2 beer. I don't have those. So I am excited for it. I think it's going to be better for consumers to be able to find what they want without having to go out of their way to do it. I used to do a lot of reporting when I was writing for Now Magazine about the business side. And, you look at Alberta from 1992 until I think 2014 was the last stats I had. Drinking and driving went down every year in Alberta after they privatized because people didn't have to get in their car or their pickup truck and drive to the next place to get their booze and drive back again. They could just walk to the corner and get it. Yeah. So
now we even have Uber and we have DoorDash and stuff like that. You can get it. So
yep. And Alberta still returns the same amount of revenue, more per capita to the government in this privatized system than Ontario does through its.
I think that is one of the biggest misconceptions maybe is that the government will make more money off privatizing segments of the alcohol business because
it's not all going in Galen Weston's pocket like they want you to think.
No, it's you pay more tax on the stuff you produce. And so that's a big fight that we're having with the government is just breweries pay the most tax in Ontario than any other province. And so the more we produce to get to these stores, the more the government's going to make. That's on one. But when you're buying product as a store, you're paying taxes too.
Totally. Yep. And we're also paying for, our rent. We're also paying property taxes. We're also paying living wages to all of our employees.
Well, now all these C stores will also be they have to have a smart serve and they also have to have a license.
Yeah. They're going to create so many more private sector jobs.
Yes.
And that's not something to be overlooked.
Well, distribution is one of the big things that is kind of going away. You hear in the media, it's all about the beer store doing beer distribution. That's not the case. We can have any third party we want delivering, we could do it ourselves, or we could hire someone like TNG Prologics to do our deliveries, but we could also go to someone else. And so the distribution is going to open up in this province. And I think that's something that's not talked about as much, but so you're excited for C-stores coming. You think it's just more convenient.
I think it's better for the consumer, and it's not going to deplete the revenue going to the government.
Now, the loaded question before we take a break here.
Hooray.
What is next for Ontario craft breweries? What do you think?
I was listening to your talk with Jordan about, that it has been a hard time for a lot of breweries lately, but at the same time, I'm also seeing True History open on St. Clair, and I'm seeing Lovebird open in Blue Mountain, and all my friends in Prince Edward County.
So these are smaller places.
They are. So I know it's hard for some breweries to sustain. I'm like, rest in People's Pint. Like I loved People's Pint. I was so sad when they went under. Barn Cat, we've lost some good breweries for sure, but other new ones are still opening. So I don't, although it's a hard time for breweries, I think it's just a time of change for breweries. I think there is opportunity for new breweries, but the ones who really focus on local and aren't concerned with just getting LCBO SKUs. I think there's still...
Well, it's a totally different business model. You want it to be confined to your walls and build a big tap room. You make more money on site, but then how do you grow to... Like, how do you invest in new tanks, and where's that product going to go? So it's a stepping stone. I think to your point, a lot of breweries will open thinking within 5 years they're going to be growing, and you got to take the slow approach. But
I look at like Red Tape, on the other side of town. Red Tape does fantastic beer, And it's a tiny little brew space, right? Tiny little tap room, tiny little brew system. And they serve their community so well. They have trivia nights. They're out in the community. They're such active participants. Sean and Sarah Beth are wonderful people. And that's the kind of brewery model that I think still works for new breweries coming in.
Yep. And that's how Left Field started as well, too.
Exactly. And look at them now. I was Liberty Village yesterday, and their space there, it's my second office now.
Limp Bizkit.
Yeah. I wasn't there for the Limp Bizkit concert, but everyone around me was. And
where do you think, what's next for Ontario Craft? It's just... focusing on your backyard, is that kind of what you're trying to summarize?
I think for new breweries wanting to get into the game, there is still room for that. For the mid-sized breweries, I don't know. I wish the beer tax was lower. I wish the government made it easier for, as you talked about with Castle or Jordan, I can't remember which. The costs have gone up. The price of aluminum has gone up. Shipping has gone up. Most of the shipping companies that were around 3 years ago just seemed to fall by the wayside.
Within the span of like months.
Yeah, it was just one after another. All of the people bringing us beer. Oh, that's a beautiful sound.
That is Electric Spritz. It's a hibiscus and lime seltzer.
Huh.
Just packaged.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know what's coming up. I don't know what's going to happen with the brewers in the next few years. I hope they take advantage of the fact that there are going to be some convenience stores that want to differentiate from the 7-Elevens and, the ones who are just getting the same thing time after time. Yep. I think you look at the Dépanneur in Montreal, some of them go hardcore into craft beer, and that's how they set themselves apart. Yeah. Hopefully some convenience stores do the same thing.
We'll see. Okay, we're going to hear an ad, a Brewed For You festival ad, and we're going to come back with some rapid fire questions. Hang tight.
Hey guys, it's Sadie here from Great Lakes Brewery with some really exciting news coming for you this summer. We're happy to announce that on August 24th, we're going to throw our first ever large-scale craft beer fest right here in beautiful South Etobicoke. It's called Brewed For You Fest with 20 plus breweries and cideries, some of our closest pals in the industry. We're excited to have Shannock Road doing an amazing Celtic rock set, as well as my personal favorite, a 90s throwback set by the band Discman. Brewed For You Fest here at Great Lakes Brewery on August 24th. Go to greatlakesbeer.com for details.
We're back with Dan Grant with some rapid fire questions. Now, Dan, other than the Vienna lager that you've been enjoying there, what other beer have you been enjoying recently?
All my friends, they have a softy pale ale. They just use more ingredients, so you get like a big, full, prickly mouthfeel, and it's so well balanced.
We rented, we had an Airbnb years ago. We had our sales retreat in PEC, and it was right across the road from their shop, and they weren't open to the public yet. They were canning their first batch, and and we went over there, and we had already had some drinks during the day, and that one just put us over. But okay, so all my friends, name your celebrity doppelganger.
So when I was in high school, it was Kirk Cameron.
Okay.
Dating myself. 10 years ago, I would have been George Stroumboulopoulos. I actually won a Halloween costume. I went as a zombie version of him called George Stroumboulopoulos, and out at the Cadillac Lounge, and I won best costume that day.
There you go.
Today, I have no idea today. I just look old and haggard these days.
George doesn't drink, so that's the one thing you guys don't know.
But he is vegan.
Yeah, there you go.
And the same age.
Name a person in the industry that has or continues to inspire you.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this one. And I mean this genuinely. Peter Bullitt is one of those people, because as I was saying in the last segment, I see him at the brew pub sometimes, and he'll be like climbing a ladder and putting up slats, or he'll be taking something outside the pub and dismantling it with his power tools. And it's just like, and he's been super generous. The times when I've asked for sponsorship, GLB has thrown in more than I've asked for. I just think I love seeing a brewery the size of GLB that still does feel like a small brewery. So Peter to me has always been an inspiration. But also like Aaron Broadfoot and Aaron Navarro. And I know, people who've really taken a chance on speaking out for the betterment of the industry and trying to bring more inclusivity to the industry, who had so much shit heaped on them for doing so. The abuse they take from insecure people who, want things to be the way they've always been. So I know Ren is as diversified from just beer diversity. And Aaron Broadfoot has stepped out of the industry, former owner of Little Beast Brewing in Whitby. But those are people who I just have so much respect for because they, I've chosen to do the safe thing. Most of the RUNTOBEER is about having fun and the positivity. We always stay out of the politics. The people who get into the politics and do it for the betterment of the industry, so much respect for them.
Nice. Best time and place for a beer?
Other than Bossanova, okay. So my favorite beers are usually the ones, if I'm out for a run, hot day especially, come in, crack a beer in the shower, and then have a nap. So the shower beer that happens between a run and those days don't happen much anymore. But it's such a good feeling to have a beer in the shower and then fall asleep.
If you could only drink one beer for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Does it have to be one that's still in production or one from the past? Okay.
Doesn't matter.
If it's one that's no longer in production, it was the coffee porter at Say What? The Durham Brewery used to do for them.
Yeah.
And then they scrapped it one day and went to a mocha porter, which wasn't as good.
Okay.
But for one that's still in production, it'd come with the one who brung you.
Traditional?
Big Rock Traditional.
Oh, very good.
Yep.
Favorite place to grab a beer in Toronto other than Bossanova?
Peaches Sports Bar in Parkdale.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it is so
good.
For
Hot
people
dogs
who've never
too.
been. Yeah, and they have a vegan Chicago dog.
There you go.
Yeah, it's so. If you've never been to Peaches, you've got to check out Peaches. It's the most fun place, and they've got a really good craft beer list.
Well, now I say favorite bar in the world, so it can't be Peaches.
Yeah,
So.
So in Amsterdam, there's a beer bar called In de Wildeman, means in the wild man. They don't allow any music in there. You can't, like, if you turn on your smartphone, they will yell at you and kick you out. It's just, there's no screens.
It's just all meant for conversation.
You and wonderful beer, like the lambics, like all of the good European stuff is there at a reasonable price.
Nice.
Yeah, and old world charm. Like, it's such a charming spot.
And last one, best hangover cure?
Beer.
Okay, that's like the 2 for 2 in the last couple episodes. Dan, thank you for making your way to glorious Etobicoke.
Thanks for having me.
It's always great to catch up, talk about the old beer rating days while looking ahead to the future of craft in Ontario.
I had a great time. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. And here's to an amazing opening for Bar Bossanova. Cheers. Cole's Notes. It's time to hear from our man in the lab. Cole Rays comes in another edition of his Cole's Notes. Cole is going to talk about seltzers and how they are different than beer, which is ironic as we just released a new seltzer, Electric Spritz with hibiscus and lime. Over to you, Cole.
Awesome. Hi there. Welcome back to another Cole's Notes segment. So last week, I promised that I would talk about something a little bit lighter on science, but apparently I don't know how to do that. So today we're going to be talking about seltzers and how they're a little bit different than beers that we would normally make. So seltzers are an alcoholic beverage traditionally made by fermenting sugar that has been dissolved in water. Simple as that. Generally does not contain any grains or hops. So it should be pretty easy to make, right? Just mix up some sugar water, throw some yeast at it, and boom, done. Wrong. The best analogy I can use is this. Have you ever been a poor college student only eating chips and ramen and then wonder why you're tired all the time and your hair is starting to fall out? Well, the same happens with yeast. When fermenting a beer, the yeast gets ample nutrients from the grains that we use, but when we take that away, it starts to perform like a poor college student. So, to have healthy fermentation, we have to help the yeast get enough free amino-nitrogen, or FAN for short, zinc, magnesium, calcium, oxygen, and we have to keep the pH in an optimal range for the fermentation to go nicely. So if we still have to put all this work in, why bother making a seltzer instead of a beer? Well, seltzers are a nice alternative to beer because they don't have the gluten that you would get from fermenting grains. They are also lower in calories and sugar than beer generally. Plus, they have a more neutral flavor, so we can add in fun things like with our electric spritz with real hibiscus and lime. Who knew science could taste so good?
Well, there you go. You've done it again, Cole. You've made me smarter. And I'm going to have to try that electric spritz. So thank you. Thank you for this. And thank you for making our audience a little smarter about seltzers.
No problem. And before I go, I do want to give a quick shout out to Richard at Escarpment Labs. They really did a great job with helping us dial in our nutrients for this one. So thank you guys so much again.
Well, you gave the shout out. Where can people find Escarpment Labs?
Yeah, they're up in Guelph. And you can purchase any of their yeast. They do both homebrew sizes and commercial brew sizes. You can buy it online, and I believe they also sell through a bunch of retailers like Toronto Brewing as well.
There you go. So just look up Escarpment Labs in Google, and you'll find it. Thanks, Cole.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.
Around the industry.
Ding dong. The LCBO strike is over. Yeah, that didn't rhyme, but I've had a few beers with our good friend Dan Grant from Bossanova. Whatever, you get the point. LCBO stores are open once again, and craft breweries from all over Ontario are rejoicing. The strike started on July 5th and immediately cut off retail access across the province to breweries that rely on the LCBO, right at the height of our beer season. 600 points of distribution from July 5th until Tuesday were cut off. So we're happy to see that back up and running so we can get beer out the door to the peoples. You can now get RTDs at grocery stores. You can also get large pack beer at grocery stores too. And seeing the pictures online, it seems that most grocery stores just went to the multinational breweries to get their Busch and their Coors Banquets on big pallets. So that said, your local craft brewery usually has great case pricing for you, and it will be much, much fresher. We recently handed over a check to the Sick Kids Foundation with Joe Bowen, the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The $4,251 was raised thanks to your support in purchasing cans of Holy Mackinac First Line Lager. Sick Kids saved my son's life when he was 1 year old with leukemia, said Bowen, and it was an honor to be part of this. Stay tuned for information on when we're going to run this next year. A hearty congratulations to Luc Bim Lafontaine and his team over at Godspeed Brewery on their 7th anniversary. They celebrated this past weekend with a number of collaboration beers that Luke brewed with Japanese breweries, and they brought them all in from Japan. Back in April, I spoke with Zora Freeman McIntyre, co-owner and operator of the Island Cafe here in Toronto, about the devastating fire that destroyed the popular cafe. It's episode 5 in the library below, so you can go back and listen to that one. But some good news from them. They are preparing to open a temporary location on the island that tourists and locals will be able to enjoy alike. Psst, I love you. And finally, some of our brewers were up in North Bay last week, brewing up a collaboration beer with Gateway City Brewery. And we're really excited for this. We get along with this brewery very well. Stay tuned for the release of that beer. And that's it. That's all, folks. Episode 14 with Dan Grant has moved from the mash tun to the fermenters. He ran to Bossanova. I hope that you enjoyed the conversation with Dan and will plan to visit his shop in the near future. His BrewScout blog is still live if you ever want to journey back in time to read some of his thoughts on Ontario beer. Today's episode was fueled by cans of the crushable Great Lakes Lager and Vienna Lager for Dan. But the Great Lakes Lager you can find all over Ontario at the beer store, LCBO, select grocery stores, and online at Great Lakes Beer Shop. And it's only $50 a case. You can visit the brewery at 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard in Etobicoke or grab some delicious eats and fresh pours at our brew pub at 11 Lower Jarvis Street in Toronto. If you have any content you'd love to hear us discuss on the show or just want to tell us what you're drinking, drop us a line at podcast@greatlakesbeer.com. Until next time, please remember to keep tipping your glass of fresh GLB in the right direction. Supporting local never tasted so good.
To learn more about what's happening at Great Lakes Brewery, visit greatlakesbeer.com and subscribe to our weekly newsletter or follow Great Lakes Beer on your favorite social media platforms.